Yes or no? You got 1995.
Okay. All right.
When you see the lights go down, the music go on, you're done.
Hi, my name's Judith Roberts, and I'm an alcoholic. It is such a pleasure to be here. I do not recall being in Portland or Oregon before. That's not to say I haven't been. There are cities and states I have been in that I have no recollection, but I will remember this visit. It has been so much fun. Julie and Jason have been such wonderful hosts, even though he almost got me car sick driving up to Mount Hood. He's a crazy driver. But I want to thank the committee. I want to thank Jason for asking me to come, and I consider it a huge privilege to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous. I also want to say that I have a sponsee that drove all the way up from California. So it's really nice to have her here as well. And I met some former North Dakotans in the audience. So that was really enjoyable to meet you before the meeting. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I use my sponsor. I have a home group. It's shoulder to shoulder. It is a speaker meeting, sort of like this, but not as rowdy. This is awesome. I love it. It meets on Tuesday nights in Bismarck, and if you're ever in the area, because it's on the way to nowhere, but give me a call. We'll get you there and speak. And yeah, it's not this big either. Jason said, come speak to a meeting. I was expecting something like our meetings, but this is as large as our state convention. So I'm sitting here like, whoa, okay. I also have the privilege of sponsoring women, and I tell you what, that has been the thing that has saved me so many times. I once was really, really bored or desperate, and I sort of counted how many times in the big book it talks about helping others. And it's in there that I've found 52 times. So it must be important. What I have realized is that what Bill wrote is true. When all else fails, working with another alcoholic absolutely saves me over and over and over. And I kind of describe it like my sponsor and my sponsorship line. It's like the couple engines on a train, and I come along and I hook my little car behind them, and they're kind of pulling me along in sobriety, early in sobriety, and they're pulling me along and we're chugging along. And what I kind of noticed is that it sort of is a little bit easy to unhook my little car, and kind of drift away if I, it is a possibility. But when you start working with others, it's almost like, then they're hooking their car up, and I'm smack dab in the middle of the train. And I'm getting pulled and I'm getting pushed, and it's right there where I love to be, smack dab in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am one of those people that I used to despise. I hated people like me. Because I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I can stand here today and say that I am a grateful alcoholic. And I thought, when I heard that the first time, I thought, you are crazier than I thought at first. I mean, who can say that? I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I cannot imagine. It's like, what are you selling? That was the most absurd statement I had ever heard in my life. A grateful alcoholic. And I really, really hated people that said that. But now I can, and I'll explain to you why I can stand up here today and say that I am a grateful alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 19th, 2009, and that is only due to strong sponsorship, these rooms, all of you, the big book and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am so grateful to be able to be here. Someone that, I'm that's 7.5 years, and I could not stay sober for 7 days. I could not stay sober. And I cannot, I'm the most shocked person of anyone. I mean, my friends and family are shocked, but I'm the one that is most shocked that I'm standing here today on a Saturday night sober, with all of you. And it's phenomenal. So, I was raised in Australia. My father's Australian, my mom's American. So I say that I am half and half, and I'm really mixed up. So some people think, I have a speech impediment. It's sometimes the accent comes and goes. I came to America when, long story short, I moved to North Dakota. I came to visit North Dakota, actually. I was traveling around. I just came to visit to get to know my mom's side of the family. I was 18, met a boy, and within a month I was engaged. A couple months later I was married. So I went from a city of 3.5 million to a little North Dakota town, 350 people, and there was like cows and tractors and all this stuff. And so that's where I spent the next 10 years of my life. I was raised extremely religious. I'm a PK, if you don't know what that is. It's a preacher's kid. We're the worst. So I was raised extremely strict, sent away from boarding school, to boarding school since I was in 7th grade, and I was not in an environment where there was any alcohol. We did not drink, smoke, dance, swear, play cards, any of it, right? Very strict. And so it wasn't in my world. I can't explain. I don't know why I'm an alcoholic, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It is what it is. And so I can't explain it because I think I may be the first one in 5 generations on my father's side. I do know I'm 5th generation convict. Australia was started as a prison, so I feel really at home in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I'm with my people. But so my great-great-grandmother, whatever, in England, we do know that she was arrested, because I have the court documents, arrested several times for public intoxication and prostitution. I don't fall far from the tree, but after that, nobody, there's no sign of it in my family. So I had no clue. And to me, an alcoholic was somebody who lived under a bridge, homeless, an old guy with, 3 teeth, and drank out of a paper bag. That was an alcoholic. And that image of what alcoholism was almost killed me, because I didn't know I had a problem. It wasn't that I denied. I didn't know. And I had no idea what my problem was. I had no clue what alcoholism was. But I can tell you, welcome, first of all, to all the new people, and happy birthday to those celebrating birthdays tonight. I just get a buzz when I see that, and especially the person with a few hours and a couple days. That's what it's all about. And welcome. Oh my gosh, you guys look good compared to what I remember my first day. I mean, I was just like vibrating. It was bad, so I had no clue what alcoholism was, and I said that. But if you don't identify with everything in my story, details and dates or job, whatever, that I've been to prison, not been to prison, or anything like that, don't dismiss the other part. And what I'd like to encourage anyone that's new here tonight is to listen and identify to, did you drink or feel the way that I drank or felt? Did it affect you the way that it affected me? How did you feel when you weren't drinking? How did you feel when you were drinking? And is there any similarities? Because when I came in here, I had no clue. Like I said, I thought being an alcoholic meant you're drinking every day, and which I was, but I didn't really know I was. It's like Bloody Marys for breakfast is not drinking. That's breakfast. I don't know. But so the identification. And the reason why I say that is because the first thing about my story is that I did not touch a drop of alcohol till I was 28 years old. And that's late in the rooms, from what I hear. But 28 years old, and that's because I came from a very strict environment and went straight and got married at 18. And I was a very strict religious environment and in that marriage. And yes, things were wrong and whatnot, but cutting to the chase, I really, around my 28th birthday, I wanted to die. I didn't know what was wrong. I believe today I was just an alcoholic waiting to ingest. But I was just restless, irritable, and discontent in my life, and I did not know what was wrong with me. I could not connect with what, going to church, and I could not connect with a higher power, and I could not connect with God, and I just couldn't connect with anyone else. And I was constantly seeking. I constantly was living my life. I'll be happy when I go on vacation, or when I come home, or when work, slows down, or when I get the promotion. Whenever, I'll be happy when. And when would come, and I'd be happy for a week or two, or I'll be happy when I get him, or I'll be happy when I get rid of him, whatever it is in life. And I'd get it, and then again, there was just something missing, and I was having all these stomach problems and whatnot. And so I had a guest come over one day, and this person said, well, I know what would make you feel better, vodka. And or drink. And I was like, well, I don't have any alcohol. And so she goes, well, we got to go buy some. I had never had a drop. I'm 28 years old, okay? And I said, well, we can't go downtown, we don't do that. We don't go into a liquor store. So we had to drive to the next town. I'm crouching down in the car. She goes and gets it, brings home, and puts it into orange juice. And I had my first drink, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And now I know it was called a screwdriver, orange juice and vodka. And I took that first drink, and it tasted disgusting. It was disgusting, and I was like, you just ruined a perfectly good glass of orange juice. What, and this is gross. And I was going on, now I know why we don't drink, and blah, blah, blah. And all the while I'm saying that, I'm taking another drink. I'm taking another drink. And I tell you, and I know I've heard it from a lot of you guys, and you know what I'm going to say. It went down, and it hit the bottom of my stomach, and just went boom. And it filled every cell in my body. I describe it this way, on the movies, and you have the safe cracker, and they're listening, and they're doing it, turning the safe thing that way and then that way, and the tumblers click in and click, and then they open the safe. That's what it felt like. And it was like the tumblers just went click, click, click. And the genie was out of the bottle. And it was amazing. At that point, my drinking went underground really fast. It wasn't drinking, it was medicine. I have a reason, for everything. But I can't drink in that environment because we don't do that. And so immediately, my drinking went underground very, very quickly, and I drank alone. Within a year, I was divorced. I was excommunicated out of the church, which for you that aren't familiar with that means they take a vote and they kick you out and you're going to hell. So that's where I started. And then I moved 100 miles away into the capital of North Dakota, and I moved into this hole of they called it an apartment efficiency, but there was a cot And I washed my dishes in the bathtub. I didn't have a kitchen. I had like a microwave. And if I had to do dishes, I exchanged. I don't say I lost anything. I traded it, and I traded it willingly for this new thing I had found, this answer that immediately became my higher power, my best friend, my love, everything. It was everything to me. And so I lost, I traded it, my husband, my family, my community, everything, a 3,000 square foot home, everything, and ended up in this place. I would say back in the day that I didn't have any consequences. I didn't have any consequences. Nothing happened to me, but already, that's a pretty good first year of drinking. And I remember my first husband, I number them, keep up. Okay. My first husband, he's a good man. And part of my amends to him is I want to say that. He was a fantastic man and did nothing wrong. He stood in front of me and tears rolling down his eyes, and he says, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I did not have an answer. I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea that, like the book describes, I had this allergy that now that I've ingested, and every time I do, I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know that when I go out, I may not come home. And I don't know where I'm going to end up. And I don't know that I'm blacking out. I have no clue what's happening to me. I have no experience, nothing to judge it against. And I don't know, but I know that I am not going to put that genie back in that bottle. I know that. And I cannot live without it. From that first drink, I could not. I didn't know that. I had no clue that I had this different reaction. It didn't depress me. It lit me up. I could be ready for bed 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm tired. You put 2 drinks in me, I'm putting makeup on, I'm dressing now, and I'm heading out, and where's the party? And then after the bar's closed, where's the after party? And then when everybody else wants to go home, I'm like, where are you going? It just lights me up, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I have no clue. And he's standing in front of me, and he says, "What's wrong?" And I know, because I've seen it, because I work with a lot of women, and I know what the look was on my face. It was blank, and my eyes were dead and hard, because I didn't have a reason. I didn't have a justification. I didn't have an answer, but I knew what I was going to do anyway. And I walked away from a very good man. Now, quickly, my family, no one had been divorced in 5 generations. I'm the first. This is not good. And the church had already kicked me out. And so my family had to have a meeting as well and decide what they're going to do with me. And they're talking about disowning me. And that means my siblings, 4 of them, there was 5 of us, they would not be able to talk to me anymore. And I would lose everything. And my siblings were that's the only thing I had. And so I did what people like me who are full of self-centered fear do. And that is, we do whatever we need to survive. We do whatever we need to get our way. And I told my family that my husband, that really wonderful, wonderful, God-fearing person, a man of character and integrity, I told them that he had abused me and beat me. And my family turned on him and hated him, and I destroyed that man and his reputation, and it wasn't true. And in case I go over, I won't go over, but in case I forget, I want to say that I have made direct amends to him, because I don't want to forget to say that. I made direct amends to my family for that, because they carried it with them, and I didn't know I was affecting the people around me. I don't have children, and I always would say, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not hurting anyone. But my nieces and nephews adored him. He was one of those fun uncles. And they looked up to him, and he was a man of faith, and I stripped that away from them. And I didn't know this, but my sister held a little 8-year-old and a little 10-year-old, and they sobbed for over an hour because their uncle had done that to their favorite aunt. And they turned on him. And for over a decade or more, 15 years, they hated him. So I was able to make direct amends to that because of this program. And I was able to meet with his parents and give them their son back. I could not make up for what I'd done, but every time I speak, I like to say, he's a wonderful, wonderful person and a wonderful man. I did not know it when I was making amends to his parents, but his father was sitting there and he hadn't been feeling well. And at the time that I was making amends, and they didn't want to see me, they didn't want to let me into their home after what I had done to their son, the youngest of 3 boys, but they did. They welcomed me into their home, and I was able to explain what had happened and where the journey that I'd been on. I didn't know it, but my ex-father-in-law's body was riddled with cancer. And 4 months after I made that amends, I attended his funeral, and I was able to go to his funeral, and I was able to sit there. And that's because of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I don't know if I would have been able to live with myself, because that man loved me, and he loved his son, and I had broken his heart. I was his little favorite. He was the youngest, and I was the daughter that man never had, and I stripped that from him. And again, I'm not hurting anyone, right? What I'd always say is, I'm just having fun. You all got to do it when you were in high school. You know, you learned how to drink, you had party, got it out of your system. You all did it in college. I didn't get to do that. I missed out. I'm just learning how to do it, and I'm sorry, oops, that I get out of control because I just don't know how to do it, right? And so, you know, that's what happened. Now, I remember one of my first parties, you know, after I left that marriage and I'm on my own, and I went to this party, and all they had was tequila. I didn't know what tequila was. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, you know, this doesn't taste very good, and they didn't have anything there, but they had a pan of brownies. And so I'm standing, you know, I always sat up by the bar, you know, I'm just drinking a year and a half by now, but I'm already got my place right by the bar, you know, and so I would take 1 shot of tequila and a brownie chaser. 1 shot of tequila, brownie chaser. 1 shot. Yeah, that night was kind of interesting. Last I know, someone drugged me, and drugged me up into the bathroom. I laid on the bathroom floor all night. I'm the type of person that, you know, in the big book it talks about you can't avoid it, you can't go anywhere, even to the North Pole or something like that, and an Eskimo is going to come by. I will find it wherever I go. I did a geographic down to Nebraska, in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, and the plains, and I heard about this thing. It's called Rendezvous. No, not Rendezvous, something like that, right? And all these people go and they dress up like they're from the 1800s. And I heard that they have parties afterwards, and you know, and they're all camping out there, and tourists can come, but they have to get out at 5 p.m. because then there's, you know, something happens. But you have to dress up if you want to get in and stay in. So I go there and I make friends, and they're like, oh, well, you need to be dressed up. You want to stay for the party? Because I'll find a party wherever I go, even in the fields or sand hills of Nebraska. And so they dressed me up in this authentic Lakota Native American buckskin dress, have moccasins on, they do my hair. You know, I look like Sakakawea, walking around, and actually I kind of look like a real messy Stands with a Fist from Dances with Wolves, you know. I was crazy looking, you know, with the hair and everything. So I stayed there and partied with those 1800 fur trader people, and it was crazy. And some good people looked after me, and I woke up and I'm in this teepee. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I got to get out of here. I got to really, really get out of here. And you ever tried to find a door in a teepee? I mean, it's just crazy. And I'm like going around like, I keep going in circles. It's like NASCAR, you know, left turn, left turn. It's just like crazy, and I can't find the door. And man, they said, oh, it's over there. I get out and I take off, and I still haven't found the people that dress belongs to. So if anyone here has missing a buckskin dress, talk to me later. And that's, serious. I still have it. I left. So, but you know, I don't really have very many fun stories or anything like that. At the time, yes, it was fun at the beginning. It was. But I never stopped to ask, well, was your ex-husband having fun? Was your parents having fun? You know, when your mom and dad are in Australia and they don't know where their daughter is and she doesn't communicate with them, and they have to call the police, and I come home and notes are pinned on my door in my apartment. Call your mom. She wants to know if you're alive. Bismarck Police Department. I mean, they're leaving me notes. You know, and my family, and I never stopped to ask how much fun they were having. And the truth is they weren't having any. My last drunk was the Martin Luther King weekend. I forgot. I got married again in there. Husband number 2. And I thought he was like me. And he drank, you know, and I met him out. I was a limo driver trying to make ends meet. And he was, you know, in the limo, and met and married like an alcoholic very quickly. And I thought he was like me, and we had a good time, and then got married about 8 months later. And all of a sudden he's like, okay, well, now we got to be responsible and get to work. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that. And so immediately, again, my drinking went out underground, and I did a geographic to get away from him so I could drink how I wanted. And I actually went to law school, and I do not know how I passed law school. I don't remember my 3rd year. And at that point, I can see my drinking really, really got out of control. And I seriously don't remember most of that year. I don't know how I passed, but I did. So I actually was the attorney for the Chief Justice of the state of South Dakota. I had done a geographic to South Dakota. And the only reason why I mention that is because I'm the attorney for the highest sitting judge in the state. And that's a little bit of a prestigious job. So if I want to party, I have to do it at home alone, which suited me just fine, because at that point I was a daily drinker. Or on the weekends I'd have to go out of town. And where I would go was south to the reservation. I did a lot of work on the reservation. And that's where I was introduced to cocaine, fell in love with cocaine. It's part of my story, drinking and cocaine. And that's where I'd go to get drugs, or I'd go to Deadwood, South Dakota. If any of you guys seen the show, Deadwood is a wild town, okay? And it doesn't sleep, and it's all casinos. And so that's where I would go, one or the other. So the last weekend, or the last time I was drinking, I went to Deadwood. And I once again woke up somewhere I didn't want to be, and I don't know, I had to get out of there. It was one of those moments I had to get out. So I grabbed my stuff, jumped into my car, headed out, and promptly ran into another vehicle. I knew that if I waited around, they would find a lot of stuff in my system. And so I took off from the scene. And I drove down from Deadwood to Rapid City, and I called the only person really that I was friends with at that point in time. And he was a really good drinking buddy of mine, and he did a lot of drugs as well, a lot of meth, and he was just exactly like me, so we got along really well. I called him up and I said, I had a rough weekend and I could use someone to talk to. So it was 10:30 on a Sunday morning. We went and I said, meet me at this bar. And he had disappeared for 2 months. I didn't know where he was. And I just, I was like, where have you been, man? And I'd come and talk to me. And I'm sick and I'm shaking and I need some alcohol coming off a really bad weekend. So I go to this bar. They have 2-for-1 Bloody Marys. So I said, set 4 up. And I'm sitting there with 4 Bloody Marys because I need some and I'm shaking. And he comes in the door. And this is one thing in Bill's story that I can relate to. When he opens the door and there stands Ebby, if you recall the story, and he's looking fantastic. And Bill says, I could maybe argue with what he was saying, but I couldn't argue with the evidence. There he stood. He was almost committed for in the insane asylum for drinking. And yet here he was, sober. And his eyes, he talked about his eyes. When my friend walked in that door, he glowed. He just radiated this joy, and his eyes were alive. I mean, he wasn't sunken in, and he was looking healthy, and the whites of his eyes weren't yellow. I mean, he just looked great. And I sat down. He sat down across, was in a bar, and I'm drinking and smoking. And he sits there and he starts telling me what he's been doing for the last 2 months. And he had been in Alcoholics Anonymous. At 2 months, he went into the bar and carried a message that saved my life. And I stood there and I was fascinated. Not that it had anything to do with me, but I was fascinated. And so I went home. My whole story is seconds and inches. I went home. By that time, I'm drunk again, driving, and which I did all the time. And I had to drive 2.5 hours to where I lived. And I didn't know, I had Monday off, so that's really good drinking time. So I have to, maybe go get that. Or maybe I should go to this thing, the support group or whatever it was, I wanted what he had. I don't know to this day, and it just gives me chills. I don't know to this day what made me go to the meeting as opposed to the liquor store. And I walked in there still drunk and buzzed, drunk. And no one, said a thing to me except welcome home. That freaked me out. And then they gave me a 24-hour coin, and I was sitting there thinking, do I have to tell them that I've just been drinking, Do I have to tell them? And then as soon as it was over, I sat there and I was just a mess, and it just didn't apply, and I hated it, and it was like Mother Goose had decorated all these sayings, first things first, and easy does it, and I'm like looking around, and I'm looking at these steps, and I hated God. I mean, remember, I'm kicked out of the church, and that's God's fault, and I can't do anything, and you're not fooling me, and, it's just like, whatever, I can't do this, I just can't do this. So I was heading out. I was heading for the door, and thank goodness for people that sit by the door, because there's this old guy, and it was exactly what I expected Alcoholics Anonymous to be. There was 6 old guys there in overalls, South Dakota, no teeth, all right? That's exactly what I thought. And this one guy named Gary, he body blocked me from going out the door, and he stuck out his hand. And if all you can do, step 12, carrying stick out your hand. I would have been gone, and I never would have come back. And he stuck out his hand, and he grabbed it in my hand, and he said, I'm Gary. What's your name? And he says, do you have this big book? And I was like, no. And it's not very big. Why don't you call it the blue book, okay? It's just... You guys are a bunch of idiots. Seriously. And he said, here, and he grabbed one that belonged to the group, and thank goodness for that too. I mean, so what if it doesn't get returned? And he gave it to me, and he said, read that and bring it back. So what I did is I went home, and I was like, I'm going to prove it. If I can stay sober for 24 hours, I don't have a problem. I'm going to earn this chip. I don't know why it was a big deal, but I was going to earn that chip. because then I didn't have a problem. Well, I stayed in bed all the entire day because I knew if I'd get up on that Monday, I would go to the liquor store. And I laid in bed and I read the 164 pages of the book. And I read it, stayed in bed, read it. When I was done, I snapped it shut and tossed it. I said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life. I hated it. It's not me, whatever. I went back, though. I was going to announce that I had stayed sober for 24 hours. They didn't care. I don't know. So then, and I went there day after day after day, 8 p.m. every single day, and I sat in that seat, and I would not say I was an alcoholic. I would not. I'd say I'm Judith, and I'd glare at the person next to me like, what? You got a problem, you know? They were old guys, but they were scared of me. And I listened, and I identified, and I was like, oh, I felt like that. Oh, okay, that's what, and I learned about the allergy of the body, and allergy, I was like, what are they talking about, allergy? And what all that just meant is that it affects me abnormally from the rest of the population, that I don't know what's going to happen. And it's all in the doctor's opinion, and it's fabulous. And it was like, thank God, I thought I was insane. Because who does what I do? Who forgets they're married? I forgot that I didn't tell you that I'd left husband number. Well, actually, he kicked me out. He looked at me. He's a good man. I've had a lot of nice men. Okay, I've had a few good men. It's a lot, actually. Good people. And he looked at me, healthiest Al-Anon I've ever met, and he said, I am not going to watch you kill yourself. And he kicked me out. And he said, when I come back after this weekend, I want you gone. So I packed up my stuff, and I also packed up his collector's Harley, and I took it. Yeah, I'm still making amends on that one. All the Harley people, they just hate me after that part, you know? It's just like, collector's item Harley. So I learned about that, and I didn't want to say that I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to say it because I knew fundamentally deep down inside me, and I didn't even know that the book said this, I didn't have choices left. It doesn't talk about that we have a choice to do this or to do that. We have two alternatives. And alternatives are just, to me, it's like being on walking on an escalator that's going down. You know, if I keep walking and walking, I'll make some headway up. But if I stop walking, I'm going to go down. I mean, there's just two alternatives: keep walking or going down, type of thing, right? I can't go left, right, whatever. I'm two alternatives, and one is to go to the bitter end of where I'm heading, an alcoholic death and a disgusting life, or to accept this solution that you guys were trying to offer me in a kind manner. And I didn't want that I knew once I said those words, I'm an alcoholic, that I would either have to go back out and drink myself to death or take my life, or that I would have to do something. It took about 2 weeks. And finally one day, and it's coming around, and this storm is raging inside me because I knew. And it came around, and finally I said, I'm Judith, and I'm an alcoholic. Now, I wish I could say that I embraced you all, and I loved you all from that moment, but I didn't. I hated you. And my friend and I, we were new in Alcoholics Anonymous together, and we made a pact that we're not going to be like those people. We are going to have a normal life, and we are just, we'll go to these meetings and whatnot. And that's exactly what I did. I sat in those meetings I did not miss a day. 8 p.m. every night I was there. I parked my car around the block so no one could see that I was there, but I was there every day. And I was dying. I was dying in Alcoholics Anonymous because I wouldn't do your steps. I didn't have a sponsor. I just had put aside my solution, drinking, and I hadn't picked up anything else. And I was dying of untreated alcoholism, attending a meeting every single day. And I think one of the most dangerous things that I've ever heard in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting is just go to meetings and don't drink. Because I did that faithfully. And at the end of 10 and a half months, I had a loaded pistol. And I told the group, I'm miserable, and I didn't tell them about that I wanted to kill myself, but I said I'm miserable, and I'd rather be miserable with alcohol than without. I cannot live this way, because I was sitting in my plush office with a window view at the Capitol, marble and stained glass windows, sitting out, looking out of the at the rose gardens, watching the women prisoners who they'd bring over every day to trim the roses and to do the grounds at the Capitol are beautiful. And the women in orange would come, and I'd watch them out there, and I'd be rocking. Just don't drink, just don't drink, just don't drink, just don't drink. I'm not drinking today. Just don't drink. Every 15 minutes, just don't drink. And I wanted to die. And I would look out at those prisoners, and I would envy them, and I wanted to be them, because the decision had been taken away from them, and they didn't have to fight anymore, and I was fighting every single second. I didn't know the second part of the illness that I had was the obsession of the mind, and even though I had set the drink aside and I'd been separated from cocaine and alcohol from January the 19th on, I was dying of untreated alcoholism, and my brain, my mind was so noisy, and the obsession, and all I could do is, I remember just rocking in my $1,000 suit in my plush office, looking out at the prisoners and envying them, because they were at least more free than I was. Now, I didn't understand that you can get loaded in prison, sorry. I thought that they had it made, because at least the fight was over. At least the fight was over. What I had done then is I did a geographic job, because obviously my job was what was wrong. And I had gone and I had I got hired by the U.S. attorney. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't know anything about don't make any rash decisions, right away. So I was like, great, more money, prestige, power, possessions, everything. This is going to, fix me. 6-figure income. I had it. I had everything, okay? And I was dying, and I wanted to die. So I did this geographic, not thinking, what was my job description? Violent crime and drugs on the reservation. Prosecuting drug use on the reservation. That's where I went to buy my drugs. Right, not smart. I just, didn't figure. So the very first case that came across my desk, I knew the person, okay? I'm lucky that I'm here today and not in a federal prison. Can you imagine at the defense attorney's table, and they look over and it's like, Your Honor, just a moment. Yeah, I can tell you some things about your attorney. So I had to disclose. I didn't say how I knew this person. They were saying he was the biggest drug dealer on the reservation. He wasn't. Seriously. Okay, D was a good guy. I mean, he just had a little business. But anyway, so I said, and they're like, well, how do you know him? Because I had to disclose. I can't prosecute someone that I've been in the same room with doing that. And I was like, well, you know how it is on the reservations. We're all related. Because that's, they believe all creatures, all of us are relations, right? Birds, animals, we're all related. Okay, I'm not Native American, all right? But I'm claiming this at the point. Oh, it was not nice. The U.S. attorney flew in, 3 FBI agents in the room, the U.S., everybody, and these men there's 6 men and me. And the FBI agents, they're screaming at me, screaming. And they look, and I am 11 months sober, 10 and a half, 11 months sober. And now I'm experiencing consequences. And I didn't tell you, when I got sober, I was $90,000 in debt because I lived on credit cards because I used my money for drugs and alcohol. And they told me things like, I don't care what you say, we will never trust you again. They couldn't fire me, but they said, you may as well not come back to work. So I guess I was fired. I don't know, technicalities. But they said, don't bother coming back. And they said, and we're looking into this. And they went back into my FBI file, because you have to have FBI clearance to work there, and they're they're after me. And I walked out, and I'm devastated. Here I'm sober, and it's like, why is this happening to me now? I'm doing everything. I'm going to a meeting, and I'm expecting, now everything's supposed to be fine, and now I'm having consequences. I don't have a job anymore. They're probably going to blackball me. I don't know if I'm going to prison or if I'll ever practice law again. And I'm sitting in my car and sobs, and I don't know what I'm going to do, because in 3 weeks rent is due and I don't have any money. In 3 weeks my car payment, sports car, is due. In 3 weeks, my motorcycle, because I sold that collector's item. I know. I bought my own Harley because it's nicer. And that's going to get repoed. And in 3 weeks, I'm going to be homeless. I don't have a job. And the first thought that goes through my mind is, I'll just go down to the reservation. I'll do what I need to do to survive until I can't live anymore, and then I'll end it. And I know what I have to do. There'll be people to take care of me. I just have to do what I have to do. Seconds and inches, that was the best thinking I had. Because I didn't have a program, hadn't worked a step, didn't have a sponsor, and I was dying. This is the next thought, instantly following that thought. And I believe today it came from a higher power that I despised. If I was praying, it would have been more like obscenities. And the next thought that came through my mind is, I hear Rapid City, or I know that Rapid City has strong AA. Maybe someone there can help me. And so I put my stuff in my car and I drove to Rapid City 2.5 hours, where my buddy 12-stepped me. And I walked in there and they saw I was dying, and it was a strong group, and they surrounded me and embraced me, and I got a sponsor who saved my life. And there wasn't very many women, and it was a man at that point in time. He was a little Harley mechanic, and he kicked my butt. And that's exactly what I needed, and I didn't get any self-pity, and I didn't get any sympathy, and I just got steps. And that's what I did, and he saved my life. And he was hard. He was one of those mean ones, He was one of those ones that would come up and he'd say, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine. And he goes, well, why don't you tell your face that and walk off? Bad. Bad. He's the most loving, and gentle man I know, but boy, he kicked my butt, and I am so grateful. I do have a female sponsor now, because he said I needed to learn how to be a lady, and he couldn't help me with that. And so now I do have a sponsor that I meet with weekly via Skype. But they took me through the steps, and I found the solution. And I went through the steps, and I struggled, and I struggled with the higher power thing. I struggled because of my dad, and I struggled because of the church, and I struggled. But I finally had to come to grips with it. I finally had to. And I worked the steps, and I made my amends, and I've gotten out of debt, and I paid off that $90,000. And I no longer work in law. And what I've done is I've been able to, I get to help other women alcoholics. And that's what I do. And I no longer have that power, possessions, and prestige that I once had. I don't have very much at all. I don't have the sports cars anymore, and I don't have the Harley. I don't have any of that anymore. And I've never been happier. I've never had more fulfilling life, more meaningful life than I do right now. And I know that my time is up, and I'd just like to say, I'd encourage you, if you're new, get a sponsor. Don't do what I did. Don't be a slow learner. Get a sponsor and work the steps. I wish I could stay here and talk a lot about the steps and going through the steps, but I've run out of time. But it's only through them, and only through making the amends, and only through every day I live in 10, 11, and 12, every day. And it's the most amazing life, and I get to be free. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be free. I just want to close with one thing, and it describes so much better than I can of what this has done, what AA has done for me. And it's towards the back of the book. And it says, AA has filled my days with friends, laughter, growth, and a feeling of worth that is rooted in constructive activity. My faith in and contact with my higher power shines more brightly than I dreamed it could. Those promises I thought were impossible are a viable force in my life. I am free to laugh all of my laughter, free to trust and be trusted, free to both give and receive help. I am free from shame and regret, free to learn and grow and work. I have left that lonely, frightening, painful express train through hell. I have accepted the gift from all of you of a safer, happier journey through life. You know, I may not have all those possessions and the paycheck and the prestige and the power, but I can tell you, God pays his employees well, and I am overpaid. Thank you.